Hey, welcome to Scooby-Topia. We're going back to basics this week for something I've wanted to talk about and revisit for a while. A particular entry many Scooby fans seem not too fond of. Last time we discussed the aesthetic of Americana being a huge aspect of Scooby-Doo, and this might just be the most Americana you can put into one TV special, so what better follow-up is there? In the 1970s in particular, Hanna-Barbera began producing TV specials, sometimes referred to as films by fans, that would run around 50 minutes in length and air on NBC or ABC or whichever network. You might be familiar with some, like A Flintstones Christmas, The Flintstones Meet Rockula and Frankenstone, Casper's Halloween Special and First Christmas, Yogi's First Christmas, The Harlem Globetrotters Meet Snow White, which I mentioned in the relevant video, Yogi Bear's All-Star Comedy Christmas Caper, and more. Scooby-Doo only got one of these, and we're here, as you should know from the title, to talk about that one, Scooby-Doo Goes Hollywood. When people watch this special now, they're often surprised by how bouncy and fluid the animation can be at times, especially in contrast to Where Are You and the other Scooby shows until here being typical stiff Hanna-Barbera fare. I'd say most comparable to the recent Trick or Treat film. This is actually not unique to this special though. Most if not all of the HP specials of the time upgrade from the stiff animation to the fluid kind for these specials. It was just the only part of the Scooby franchise around the time to get this upgrade, so it tends to stand out if you're perhaps less familiar with them. Like the Scooby shows of the time, it utilized a laugh track, but some releases and TV airings actually omit it for some reason, as some of the other Scooby titles have done, though I can say my DVD definitely has the original track intact. The special was released 3 months after the premiere of the first season of Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo began, as I covered in my Family Tree video, so you would expect Scrappy to be in the special having been introduced, but curiously he's not. Longtime regular cast member Lenny Weinrib, who voiced him in the first season before being recast, isn't in the special just in general. It's not really known why, so I won't speculate anything outrageous. I doubt it's anything scandalous. Some assume it might just have been when Weinrib left the role and hadn't been recast by the time, or maybe they hadn't decided on if the character was a success yet. More oddly, on the cover for the special in some territories, he does still appear on the front like he's in it anyway. It's weird. I am going to assume the special was still made during the time of the first season of that show based on how close the airing was, but also one other indication. Pat Stevens had left the role of Velma that she'd held since the Scooby-Doo show by the end of the season, as I've discussed how much I don't vibe with her replacement, but she does still voice Velma here. As a final connection, the music in the end credits is also specifically taken from the theme song of that particular show as well. I think we have an understanding of that enough though. This special also stands out for one big reason. It is the only Scooby-Doo film, if you consider it one, to not feature a real mystery outside of Scoob, and no bad guy to defeat, and to instead have the gang be actors in a TV show in a meta turn of events. Before we get into how they tried to pull that off, for some added nostalgia for the kids that grew up in the 2000s like myself, let's very briefly look at the fun home video releases. If you're not too interested, you can always skip to the next segment. Following a kids' classic VHS in the 80s as seen here, and a Warner VHS in 1997, the special was released in the modern VHS and DVD form by Warner in 2002. As far as features go, it basically just includes the same reused bonus features made for other Scooby DVDs that you've already seen if you have any. For example, here's one featuring the 4 Zombie Island era films highlighting the Americana aspect of the prior video with a song about America loving Scooby-Doo.
Like Americans in love, Americans in love.
The only actual unique feature, unless I'm horribly mistaken and falsely recognize the others, is the network game, which is your standard point-and-click to choose which item is right or wrong game. Yes, I did play it during the making of this video. The trailers are recycled as with any release, but one amusing inclusion to watch now is the Ghoul School trailer.
Now available on video cassette and DVD.
You're the man, Scoob!
Not only is it narrated by Scott Innes as Shaggy, who didn't voice in either of these films and was just the main voice at the time, but the visuals are about 90% from Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island and Witch's Ghost instead, even referring to the plantation home as the titular girls' school, which is incredibly bizarre.
It all started when we headed out to coach at a school for girls.
Get a shot of that!
Uh-huh.
It reminds me of the teasers for Legend of the Vampire and Monster of Mexico, which likewise utilized footage from those films because they didn't have any to use yet. But Ghoul School as a film from the 80s has no excuse for the same treatment. Not hating on it, just an interesting artifact. Unfortunately, that's all we really have to discuss on these. I did try to play the DVD-ROM stuff, but it's basically defunct now. Alright, let's get into the main feature. It opens like any Scooby story with terrifying eyes revealed to be a raven in the cemetery as we hear a terrified Shaggy shout for Scooby. Its shadow covers the boys as a crabby monster breaks down a wall, nabbing them and sending them down a trap door. They fall out into a catapult and fly off the set as the director enthusiastically calls cut. As the other three are on their way to set, Daphne is worried she doesn't understand her motivation in the script. The boys land and finally stretch out, Shaggy expressing how exhausted he is from having to do this. TV star Natalie Splendor catches his attention as she drives onto set, leading him to to point out that Scooby is also a star but doesn't have a car, or a dressing trailer, or flowers, or silver platter lunches.
Like I've had it, but I've lost it.
Turns out Mr. Bad Influence Rogers decides it's musical number time.
You better move over. You better watch out. The name to remember is Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo.
We also get some foreshadowing for my least favorite Scooby endeavor, Scooby-Doo and Arabian Nights, which always has people come to its defense toward me trying to say it's at least not meant to be about him, despite the final product having his name in the top billing. I don't really know what Shaggy intends to do from this musical number, the I Want song of the special you might say, as the want is expressed but not with a clear enough goal beyond saying we will be in big movies. The song is fine enough, if a little outdated sounding when it comes to musical tastes in 2023.
Don't forget to remember Scooby-Doo.
We also see the special originally didn't have the -do in the title, which was added later with home video and syndication. Poor Scooby is dognapped all the way to the network office, where we get some overanimated angry reactions of the guard until he recognizes Scooby. The receptionist proceeds to ignore Shaggy, let Scooby pass, and ask who Shaggy even is.
I'm Shaggy.
Oh, you certainly are.
Down the hall, Scooby continues to be beloved by everyone to Shaggy's surprise. He works out his agent talk on Scooby to prepare, and they walk into the president of the network's office. Luckily, the president idolizes Scooby so much, he can't help but fangirl all over him. Shaggy has Scooby set up a film reel while he gives the talk, hoping to get Scooby out of his typecast, but Scooby ends up tangled in the film before he can show his acting reel properly. He takes matters into his own hands as the lights dim, beginning how Scooby won the West, a take on how the West was won. The press, however, doesn't seem to be pleased at the sight of Sheriff Scooby. The outlaw gives terrified Scooby until high noon, but he collects himself and stands his ground, until the clock strikes 12 and he heads off, only to be swung back. By the end, he speeds out terrified, destroying the set as he rides off into the sunset. Press CJ is not impressed, taking it as a joke, laughing them out of the office. They head back to show him they're serious, horrifying the gang as they reveal they're quitting.
You want to be a star?
That's right, Velma.
But you are a star! What more could you want?
Well,
Damn, okay Daphne, serve. Anyway, Scooby actually can't answer as Shaggy takes over for him again, promising all the genres he's going to get Scooby to star in. Yes, it's a reference to westerns, but check one off for the movie's required reference to indigenous people. The gang are not sure at all about this, though. At the roller rink, star Levon has taken away time from our own show to help shoot another pilot, calling it Levon and Scooby, which obviously is a reference to the great sitcom from the time, Laverne and Shirley. Scooby jumps into skates, but like we saw in Scooby-Doo and Scrappy, he absolutely cannot skate.
The whole world? I'd be too nervous. Could we just make it Brooklyn?
They begin filming, and at least for a minute, he's not half bad, until he flies off, speeding back with Levon right into the camera. The rest of the gang watch concerned for him, and Shaggy has to tell CJ the pilot didn't work out. Setting up the next one, he has another oopsie flying into CJ. We start the new pilot, Scooby Days, which is obviously a reference to another sitcom of the time in Happy Days, bringing us back to the 50s. The resident Fonzie character pops in, telling him Shaggy's in his booth, where he tells the Groove that it's been reserved for the Scoob, who rides in. Groove accepts Scoob, who combs his wig off, and we kick in the next musical number carried by Groove's voice actor, Frank Welker, aka Fred.
Yo, just a Ruby-Doo guy. A Ruby-Doopy, Scooby-Doopy, Ooby cool guy.
The song is fun, but a little repetitive for how long it goes. The girls are down bad for Scoob and want him to sing, but he starts over and destroys the jukebox, landing him on Groove's bad side. They look to CJ for approval, and he excuses himself.
I needed that.
Scooby seems content with the suggestion to go back to normal, but Shaggy insists negotiating his contract he's written up. They leave it with him having high hopes, though he tears it up. Shaggy then prepares Scooby for being a star, like rubbing elbows with others, so he waltzes himself in among the higher class. He takes a detour at the punch bowl where he's caught with his paws deep into trying to retrieve his cup, then stealing all the food for the other guests, so he ditches the fit while CJ sees the morning headline about Scooby being barred from ever returning. Not at all happy with this situation. Next, Shaggy has Scooby try to get discovered the old-fashioned way at the pool, which the gang read turned out just as bad. They turn back the clock to reminisce about when they first got him, but be careful because if you try to incorporate this into the family tree video timeline continuity, you're out of luck. The gang, looking the exact same, check out some of the dogs, and it can't be coincidence that the first dog they see looks exactly like Hot Dog from the Archies, given the context of the show was part of what led to the creation of Scooby, and his design at one point even had to be changed for being too similar.
But he lacks character.
And if so, damn the shade. Scooby does his best to impress, and they of course choose him. An interesting note, Baby Scooby here is voiced for the first time by Fred's actor, Frank Welker, and if you know anything about Scooby, he of course has been the primary voice of him ever since the What's New era. After that, they recall his first birthday party full of doggy friends. As he should, he inhales his cake while making a wish, then gets it. They wonder how he could go Hollywood after all the adventures they've had. And that makes me wonder if they really did go on ghost hunting endeavors at one point and just got turned into the 1970s ghost adventures. This sends the trio into singing a new version of the theme from the new Scooby-Doo movies as our next musical number.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo, we're missing you.
Isn't any fun without you? Scooby, Scooby-Doo, come back. Scooby-Doo, Scooby, we're missing you.
Hearing the gang sing is fun, but the visuals are just a clip show and the song is reused, even with purpose, so it's not exactly memorable. While they think of ways to try to get him back, Scooby has entered full depression mode and Shaggy decides to just make it worse with hyping him up for another attempt at fame.
You'll be another Clark Gable, another John Travolta.
Scooby and Scientology connection confirmed. We go into a fictional reality where Scooby pulls up for a big movie premiere, tripping himself and rolling up the red carpet. They're here for Super Scooby, a parody of, well, Superman.
It's a bird. It's a dog. It's a plane. No, it's a dog.
He runs into a telephone booth to disguise himself with glasses until he hears a call for help. Saving Lucy Lane, the Scooby take on Superman's Lois Lane, he rushes to the rocket headed toward Big City, the name of the city Blue Falcon and Dynamite protect, until it explodes. And with that being the last we see of this film, I assume he dies. Scooby prepares for the next film, The Sound of Scooby, where he takes on the Julie Andrews role from The Sound of Music, as if I have to say that any more than Superman. And once again, I guess he died. Tough break. Scooby sees all the Hollywood footprints and does his own while Shaggy calls for CJ. But just as they hear CJ is holding auditions for dogs to replace him, Scooby finds himself stuck. With Scooby attached to the back of the van, the gang and CJ wait for their arrival with a trick up their sleeve. They end up having fake auditions knowing the boys are watching, some just fumbling around as the boys laugh knowing their job is safe.
How did he do? How did he do?
To their shock, the replacement is hired, hoping it will be enough to bring them back. They enter as CJ expects them to return, and instead, Shaggy assumes the recasting means he's serious about Scooby being a star. He has Scoop set up the next film reel, a film called Scooby and Shuri. The two perform a magic act, and...
Oh, I know you're a pro, but this is my first time.
Now hold on, let's not do that in a family picture, so naughty. Anyway, she disappears and everything goes wrong, while CJ breaks down in tears. It's not over yet though. We have another musical number, this time disco.
Scooby-Doo.
I gotta have some time to make my mind up.
Love you, Scooby-Doo.
Gotta be sure I like what I can see. I gotta have some time to make my mind up.
Love you, Scooby-Doo.
Gotta make sure that you are right for me.
I actually really like this song, and the visuals are just amazing.
I hope those claws on your front paws are not too sharp, and please, if you ever scratch my back, don't scream if you find fleas.
Everything to look at here is just so creative in combination with a song that doesn't feel like it's immediately overstaying its welcome. Probably one of the most memorable moments. If there's one part of this special to watch, it's this one. If I was CJ, I would pick this up. Shaggy skips ahead to another film, The Love Ship, and of course it's a parody of The Love Boat. This is a very pop culture, TV, and Hollywood referential special by design. Captain Scooby's having a great time until Shaggy mentions he forgot to untie the ropes, and as the ship trails off, CJ begs them to stop the reel. CJ's men come in with a solution, and he seemingly gives in, saying Scooby will announce it on the Jackie Carlson Show, a take on talk shows, most specifically Johnny Carson's. But Scooby can barely talk again as Shaggy steps in to decide things for him, though Scoob does seem to think an Emmy is in his future. Though as Shaggy says they're getting rid of his old image, children around the world protest and shout, Shaggy insists to CJ they found the perfect vehicle this time, starting Scooby's Angels. And do I even have to say it's a take on Charlie's Angels? We see the Angels discover the criminal hideout, and Scooby dives out without time for his parachute. He screams to stop, which CJ agrees with, saying he should go back to his show. While Shaggy wants them to become big, CJ tells them they already are because everyone loves Scooby-Doo, opening the doors to show him. To Scooby's awe, everyone around the world wants him to stay just the way he is already, even shedding a tear on CJ. Everyone goes quiet as he finally makes his own choice, to stay. CJ sees them out, thankful it's finally over, though Shaggy has his own pilots, like Mork and Shaggy, a take on Mork and Mindy, or Welcome Back Shaggy, a take on Welcome Back Kotter, Shaggy and Hutch, a take on Starsky and Hutch, but he has to be thrown out as the gang leave without him.
Scooby-Doo.
What is there to say about Scooby-Doo Goes Hollywood? First of all, whoever says the special doesn't have a villain is lying, because the villain is Shaggy. He gaslights and manipulates Scooby into doing so many things Scoob doesn't want to do just because he wants more fame. Shaggy has never been unlikable to me until here. Also, if you hate the era or trend of dropping the rest of the gang, at least mostly, in favor of just these two, here's the origin at its worst. Second, the movie actually says a lot about the franchise in a weird way. The same year, after the series faced cancellation, it was soft rebooted with basically being the same show but now with Scrappy, and it saved the franchise. The year this came out, Scooby-Doo as a franchise felt like it was over, and that people maybe didn't care anymore. But when it faced danger, people said, no, we don't want to say goodbye to that dog yet, we like him. The series needed a shakeup to keep it going, and this special, as much as people don't like it for that very reason, just exemplified why the change couldn't deviate from what the dog and his friends did best, why it was so simple to keep the show the same and add a new character, something they would continue to experiment with over the following decade. Scooby-Doo and the gang were too valuable and loved to go away. Just like in the current modern times, Scooby-Doo is once again in danger after the Warner Discovery merger, but we can continue to be there for him just like back then, instead of turning on each other, blocking each other, saying the franchise needed to end anyway, and instead as a community we can fight to hashtag save the Hex Girls in Haunted High Rise, much as I doubt that will happen right now, and celebrate why he makes us so happy. Scooby-Doo may indeed have gone Hollywood, and I don't even know if any of that was meant to be taken from this special, but the sentiment of loving him that comes from it is nonetheless what I choose to take away. I will say, even at a short 49 minutes, the special feels padded out and often tedious. Plenty of songs don't hit, and Shaggy is at his worst in how he doesn't listen to his friend. At the same time, the animation is some of the best of classic Scooby thanks to the TV special status, and it's still a fun side story to spend time with if you love the character. But if going meta with the characters being TV stars is a problem for you, with it being the entire hook for this, obviously it's just not going to do it for you. And if you prefer Scooby solving mysteries, you're out of luck as well. As for how it's aged, the reliance of then modern American Hollywood pop culture also heavily dates it in ways that current younger audiences might find themselves not understanding many of the jokes, or knowing if something even is a joke. Luckily for me, I was raised primarily on TV and film of the 50s up to what was modern and could get most of the jokes even growing up, but I get the feeling that may not be true, especially for the coming audiences. That the original shows are so timeless is part of why Scooby holds up through time, but this special is rooted directly in the 70s forever. To some, that perhaps makes it an even more interesting time capsule, while to some, it might even make it an esoteric piece that's inaccessible. All of that being said, how do you feel about this first and only special of its kind for the Scooby-Doo franchise? How did you discover and watch it growing up, or did you only discover it later? And how did any of those aspects fare for you? Be sure to have that fun little discussion in the comments. Like the video if you want Scooby snacks. Subscribe to see what comes next. Follow on socials like Twitter, Tumblr, or TikTok before it's banned, etc. That's all for now. See you next time. Bye!